Hi, everyone. My name is Sara Jayakut. I'm the Senior Content Editor at the Academy of American Poets. I am so excited to be here in conversation with our Erica Doyle, the guest editor for Poem a Day in July 2021. Erica, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. This is really fun.
Good. I'm so glad.
People don't usually say that about their Zoom meetings, but these are always fun.
Right. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Let's kind of just roll right into it. How did you approach curating Poem a Day?
Well, first of all, I want to say I love Poem a Day. I love the surprise of it. I love, as a lot of people know, I'm also a principal, was an English teacher for a long time, and also a literacy consultant and coach. And so it's an incredible resource for learning. And it really gives us access to so much of what's going on in poetry in the US today, and also poetry in translation and international poetry. And I love the as the years have gone on, the addition of audio and video and the special curations. And so it's such a rich field that actually, when it was my turn, I was like, oh, wow, what has not totally been done, or who haven't I seen, or who have I seen that I want to see more of or see again? The other thing I'm really conscious of as someone who has worked, doing writing workshops in various places, and I've gotten like poets and writers grants to do workshops in both Washington, D.C. and in New York City, and worked in lots of different venues like seniors, projects, etc. I was really interested in regional diversity, not just ethnic diversity or linguistic diversity or class or ableism, sexuality, gender. I really was interested in regional diversity. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I thought is, who is writing away from the coasts right now who's really interesting? Whether it's that they're in school, because a lot of times when folks go to school for their MFAs, they kind of stay in that place. So you have all these very interesting people kind of trundling around the Rust Belt or in the Midwest and northern states. And then also I was thinking about who are really interesting writers who should be here, but right now they're kind of focused on other things. Thinking about Dr. Gwen Westerman, the amazing Dakota poet, and she also is a visual artist. So she has in later years focused on visual art. So for me, I really was kind of browsing and collecting for months and months. Some folks I already knew. They were usually newer, younger, more emerging poets that I was following. Mm-hmm. But I also went on the hunt for new voices in exciting places, often through the blogs of other poets, through anthologies, and asked people for suggestions like, hey, who is writing now that's really new and exciting? Because I wanted to also crowdsource it. So I wanted to kind of break out of whatever my, kind of my own personal regionalisms and the way that I read. And I was looking for work that excited me, that was doing interesting things with language, and that was broadening the scope of what we see in poetry in the US right now.
Yeah, and you can really see the dynamism of the month as you read it. And it's always so exciting to, one, read it as a group and then watch it roll out. Because then you make all these connections that you didn't see were there. Oh, that's so exciting.
Yes, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. So we're going from, the Northwest and Pacific Northwest, Hawaiian Islands, all the way to the East Coast and the, northern states, northern plain states, down to the Southwest. And I really wanted to have that, have the breadth of how folks are talking about life, really.
Yeah. So if you could direct readers to one poem in our collection at Poets.org that you haven't curated, what would it be and why?
So the poem I would direct everyone to is Derry Ann Martineau's Carnivorous with a Varied and Opportunistic Diet. That is a poem that is it's simply brilliant. And I remember when it came out, it was the poem that I sent to everyone. I shouted on social media about it. I talked to people about it. And that poem is, well, first of all, that poem really resonates with me because it takes a quintessential Trinidadian, iconography of the mongoose, right? And Darius is from Trinidad, and my family is from Trinidad, and so that really resonated with me. Just the language that she was using, the rhythm of the language. Oh, when she reads it, it's so incredibly beautiful. But it's this stunningly brilliant poem that uses a metaphor of the mongoose. Just sort of like, here we are, we're taking over. You can't get rid of us, and you imported us for a purpose, but we're going to take over, and you can't control us. And she says it in this way that it's just so lovely and brilliant. You can just read it again and again. It has so many layers. So it really, for someone who's familiar with the imagery, it's super powerful. For someone who's not, it's metaphorically really stunning. And it resonates, I think, with lots of people across lots of experiences. Somebody has tried to put you into a box or transplanted you somewhere where you're not originally supposed to be comfortable, but you know what? You're gonna mess things up right now, right? You're gonna bring it, and you're gonna bring all your skills, and you're gonna kill all what you need to kill, and you're just gonna take over. And they're gonna try to control you at some point, but it's not gonna work because they thought they could, but they can't. That makes me think of the saying in Spanish that they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds.
Yeah. And the way that like poems can like help you access your power.
Yes.
It's so important to just see that and
feel
that.
Yes. And with that poem, you're just like, yeah, mongoose.
Yes. Oh my God. So who are you
reading? We are varied and opportunistic. Like, come on. And you know what? That's actually a quote from the University of the West Indies. They do lots of flora and fauna of Trinidad. And the University of West Indies at St. Augustine is actually, that's a quote from their site. And it's just one of those brilliant scientific quotes that, yes, I have a varied and opportunistic diet.
It's like when things are called naturally effervescent. I'm like, yes, in no way do I ever want to use other terminology for this, for bubbles. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it also kind of feels like not a dig, but like a way of saying the thing without saying the thing,
Yes.
Yeah. And it's oh, hello. Okay. So who are you reading right now?
I'm always reading a million things. So I'm often reading books about educational leadership, because that's what I do. So right now, especially in this time of us transitioning back into the building during the pandemic, I'm reading a lot about fostering positive culture and cultures that are resilient as systems, because individuals are resilient, but you want your culture and your organization to be as well. So I'm reading that. I'm reading Yona Harvey. I'm reading Randall Horton. I'm reading, Shari Jahan, The City of the Beloved, by Adiba Talukder. And God, I read a lot. I also revisiting Joy Harjo recently, and also given the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. I am in Palestine. I'm also rereading Yehuda Amichai and Mahmoud Darwish, both of whom I teach a lot in translation in my classes. Like when I teach classes, I often bring these two incredible, forces of poetry. So I'm rereading a bunch of folks, and I'm reading some exciting new things. I'm really looking forward to Randall Horton's memoir, which is coming out. And I've been reading, some things from my friends, like Dawn Lundy Martin has been sharing essays with me that she's working on. One of which is going to be in the Best American Essays.
Oh, cool.
So I'm really excited about that. So I think it's so interesting. I'm very interested in maybe because I kind of do that myself, right? I also write prose, I write essays and fiction and things like that. And I worked in journalism for a while. And also I work in education. And so I see myself as having two jobs. But I'm really interested in poets who do that as well, right? Poets who are also visual artists, poets who are also essayists, who are memoirists, poets who are working in the nonprofit world and trying to really make change and do social justice work in the nonprofit world. As well as work in other medium. Oh, I've just been revisiting Brutal Imagination by Cornelius Eady.
Oh.
Because they are doing, they're redoing it. They're putting it up again at the Vineyard Theater.
Oh.
With Joe Morton. And, I think by the time this comes out, it might be over, but who knows? They might have it available or they might extend it. It's going to be mid-June to late June that they're doing a run of it virtually.
Yeah. Oh.
And it has music. I mean, this is a book of poems. And first of all, it's just mind blowing. And what he does with form, what he does with voice, persona, what he does with documents, right? So what he does with the realia or found poems or using actual court documents and transcripts. It's just brilliant. And of course, timely forever, unfortunately. And that they're putting it up again. I'm just excited. And it has music and they're singing. What? And it's not until you see it that you're how could this work? But Cornelius always makes it work. And it's incredible. Of course, he's a musician also, right? So he's got his band. They're going around and doing albums and being #1 the folk chart or whatever, right? So I just think it's really exciting to explore all the things that folks are doing from all these different perspectives. Because you learn about that as an artist too, right?
Yeah. And it's like there's this thing that happens when you're a writer, you're an artist, you're a creator, you're somebody who makes things.
Yes.
And you have to work for cash to live.
Yep.
And then people are like, oh, I can't work and make art. But it's like, even if you work in the arts, you can make art because you're always consuming art. So like you're always feeding that thing inside of you.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important point. And it's about really understanding yourself as an artist and how you work.
Exactly.
And also having different models of artists. I mean, that's one of the other things that I really enjoy about someone like Cornelius or someone like Jor Harjo, is these are folks who are, they're doing all different kinds of art and they're figuring out how to do it at the same time. And they just go ahead and do it. So they don't say, oh, I don't have time for this. I mean, they'll say that, but they still do things. So I think part of it is just, just pushing ourselves to make that time and figure out what works for us. Some of us work in little pieces in the mornings or in the evenings. Some of us work in some of us need to go away, spend the night somewhere else if we can. Some of us need to, get grants for things, but, really trying to figure out how you can, sustain yourself in the things you're interested in and live as an artist as well. This reminds me of Walter Mosley. He came to Cave Canem in like the second year I was there, which was like 1999. And, he was just there like to hang out. I used to be a poet. But one of the things he's talked about was how he wrote his novels while he was working at IBM.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so many people would say, he was a big exec at IBM and he wrote his novels at the same time and he wrote them in 3 months. Right. So that's what worked for him in terms of his discipline. But it just goes to show, certainly Alice Walker writing things while she's got, a young child, and she's editing. Same thing with Toni Morrison. So what has helped me a lot is having other models. So I think sometimes folks they kind of get, maybe sometimes in the common, not just media, but like there's a narrative sometimes in this kind of MFA-ish world where there's a certain trajectory that you have to follow in order to do your work and do your work well. And I think it's helpful to have other models for that, as well as the longevity of folks' careers and what they did differently from time to time, right? Going from, writer to editor to agent. And sometimes, like me, I was a teacher, I was an artist in residence, now I'm a principal. Who knows what I'll be doing when I'm 60 or 70. My friend Monica Hand, who passed away sadly, had a whole career in the post office, retired, published her first book, and then went and did a PhD program. So I think there's so many ways to live your life, and I'm very interested in artists who model different ways to be an artist in our society, which isn't always supported. You know, I remember when I was living in Tunisia, this is like a whole story. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I was living in Tunisia at one point for 6 months, and oh, to be a poet in the Arab world is the most wonderful thing. So I would tell people I was a poet. Oh, how wonderful. Oh, that is wonderful. Oh, poetry is such an important art. Oh, it's so wonderful. I mean, they have talk shows, they have shows where people are reciting poetry, okay, in North Africa. It's amazing, right? And so, you know, there's great Algerian shows where people do poetry. So it was really cool because here's, you know, my family, immigrant family. When are you going to figure out what you want to do with your life? Like, right? Like they didn't get it. But it's important to build that in ourselves and to know that the way that we as artists are perceived in this country is not the way it is everywhere. And that's something that we can hold in ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. That's why it's good to get out when we can, post-pandemically.
With a mask. What are you? Oh, I'm like, I'm so happy. Okay. What are you currently working on in your writing, teaching, or publishing life?
Okay, so what I've taken time off from teaching, so I've been saying no to any teaching gigs right now because I'm kind of work is insane. But even before that, you know, having a baby, I was like, I taught a whole lot before our baby was born. So he's 2 now. So I was like, because after that, I'm not going to teach until he's a bit bigger. Because that's always like after work, school, whatever. Also, I'm in sort of a generative space where you can sort of see the trend in the things that I've been publishing. I'm working on, I'm not sure. It's interdisciplinary right now. It's got some essays to it. It's got some sound. It's got some video. But I'm working on a historic genealogy project, which has, you know, it might have fictionalized elements, but I'm really looking at the history of my family and how it's connected to revolutions of the Black Atlantic. So one of the things that we see, certainly in the United States, the way that history is taught or the way that history is talked about is not in any kind of pan-national way at all, which is quite different than the rest of the world, right? The rest of the world often considers like how their neighbors influence them, what are their neighbors doing? And when you learn history, you learn about everyone who's around you. In the US, you really don't. And so what happens is there's a big disconnect between events in the United States and events, say, in the Haitian Revolution. However, the Haitian Revolution, which impacted the islands that my family was from, my family went to Trinidad, but they were fleeing the revolutions and uprisings in Martinique and Grenada, so in the French islands. So the Haitian Revolution, actually, it was a domino effect of revolutions in every single French-speaking island where the French Revolution was giving as much support as they possibly could. They didn't have a lot of funding, but they were supporting and training the slave uprisings in the French-speaking islands where the enslaved people were organizing and taking over. Of course, Haiti was the most successful of those. However, they happened in Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Grenada, which was a former French-speaking colony that got taken over by the British. So all of those uprisings, really, we're part of the triangle trade. So triangle trade, it goes, right, Africa, Caribbean, and the east coast of the US, and then to England or Europe, and then back down. So the Caribbean and the southeastern United States, and of course, going up to northeastern United States, really one economic, social, cultural unit. So whatever happened in the Caribbean impacted directly what was happening with Africans, enslaved Africans, and free Africans, and certainly whites who were enslavers in the continent of North America. And so what we see is increasing oppression and more rules, more stringent Black codes in South Carolina is where we see it starting after these revolutions. Right? So what we did impacted how folks here were treated, which impacts us today. So one of the things I'm looking at is as someone who is a descendant of folks who participated in these events, either as enslavers or as revolutionaries and rebels. One of my great grandparents was executed for his participation by the British, right? So, but some of my family enslaved people, ones who were white enslaved people and ones who were free people of color also enslaved others, right? So I'm really sort of examining, excavating, what does that mean? What are the connections to today? And just unraveling that. And what's really cool about it, since it's a genealogy, my family, I work on it kind of with my cousins too. So they'll call me and say, oh, I think Ma so-so was, I don't think that she had that baby consensually. I think that was something else. And did you hear about the thing where this one shot that guy? They didn't shoot people in those days. They just used to have fist fights in the yard. That must have been something really serious. What do you think? Oh, hey, we found this cousin. Somebody connecting with me on 23andMe, et cetera. So we're sort of, it's really kind of, again, like I love crowdsourcing. So we're working together collaboratively because, come on, that's what we do, right? As folks from high inference cultures, we collaborate on our storytelling. It's not just one person. It's like your whole family being like, this auntie and that auntie and this auntie and that auntie, right? So telling you all the stories. And from that, I've got poems sort of coming out of that. So and thinking about the connections to today. So the poem that I have published in Poem a Day about, really like tracing that line and then connecting it to the Say Her Name movement, where we see women participating and supporting in all these revolutions, all these uprisings, and also being victims of racial, sexist and heteropatriarchal cis oppression, but not necessarily being remembered, being celebrated, their names not being said. So, my little, allegory of the brother and the sister, and what happens to them in separate ways, and how we protect each other, stand up for each other, and finally find our way home somehow. It comes from that, comes from that exploration, and so that's what I'm in. I don't know where it's gonna go. People after my first book, people are like, "Oh, do you have another book? Do you have another book?" I was like, "I do, but I'm sitting on it right now." I mean, what's the rush?
Yeah.
I'm lucky I don't have, my tenure doesn't count, by publishing anything. So I'm free that way. Thank you, DOE. Thank you, City of New York.
That sounds phenomenal. That's so cool. Truly.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
I'm sending all of my great good energy to you in this project. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I was going to work on it. I actually was going to Civitella Ranieri in Italy. I got a fellowship to go be in the castle for 6 weeks and work, and the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So, so hopefully I'm thinking, usually I'm the kind of person that if I just sort of sit alone-ish somewhere quiet for a while, then surprising things happen, which is kind of how my first book came about. So, and subsequent things as well. So I'm just, I'm here, I'm living, I'm writing, I'm listening, I'm reading.
You're writing poem today. It's so many things. I remember so often this a poet Arcelis Gramai, my
oh
favorite,
yeah, that's my sweetie.
Gosh,
What
I love
is
her
my
so
marriage?
Much. I love her so much. We were talking once, and she was talking about how like poets like have all these hands, and she was like, how do I sometimes limit myself to like my two hands, or maybe even just a hand? And she like reached toward her body, and I was like, even this one hand is so precious, and like seeing all of your hands, it's just lovely. I'm so excited.
Oh,
thank you for all this work that you do in the world. It's incredibly important.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. I was really very pleased to be a part of this very important project. I'm so happy, and my poets are so happy and really excited to be part of this. So, and that was really sweet,
Good. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. This was so
You're
fun.
welcome.
I hope you have such a lovely day.
Thank you. I will.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.